And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Welcome to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. I am Alan Park, and I've got some conspiracy queries. Actually, I am not Alan Park. I am a man, and I use the name Alan Park. What the hell am I talking about? Well, hopefully my guest, Trent Goodbaudy, coming on shortly, will have an idea of what I'm talking about when I say I'm Alan Park, but I'm not Alan Park. I'm just a man, and I'm using the name Alan Park. And I was given that name, and it's not really owned by me. Are you still there? Yes, you are. Okay, you're going to want to find out what happened there. But just before we get rolling onto that, I want to say that I had a fascinating experience last week of being interviewed myself on a show. And it lasted nearly 3.5 hours. I have no idea why it took that long, but we talked about a lot of things, but primarily 9/11 based things. And in that time, we didn't even get it all covered. I realized the next day, though, that there were several other things I wanted to ask, really, after 3.5 hours, and I still had some unanswered questions. Oh, well. Ab Irato was a gracious host, and I will mention where you can find him and his information later in the show. And if you want to spend all of your time focusing on 9/11, Ab's show is an interesting place to do it. Several of his views were advanced and views of others that he believes are the case that I had not even heard of. And we went down a lot of rabbit holes in that 3.5 hours. And I said, though, on the night, he was pressing me. He was saying, so do you believe me now? Do you believe everything I say? And I said on the night, I will reserve judgment until I have done more research. You should always do your own due diligence. And I have done more research, but not enough to make a conclusion. So maybe when I do, I will have Ab on the show or go back on Ab's show. Maybe I'll have him on my show because then we won't have to do 3.5 hours. But there certainly were some amazing evidence offered on some websites, which I have since visited. And I can only say that with certainty that the official story of 9/11 is in even worse shape than I could possibly imagine. We will return to that topic on another show. There was a recurring theme on Ab's show, the recurring theme that almost everything is scripted and faked in the way of big media events. That's how I guess you can tell that I'm going to report the next topic with the knowledge that if he is listening, he's shaking his head right now, wondering why I would raise the issue I'm about to raise because he believes it to be a non-event. If I understand him correctly, he said there was no nuke meltdown in Japan, no victims, and no radiation pulsing its way into the oceans. However, he says it didn't happen. Most of us don't want to think about it, and I'm not on either side of the fence. I think it did happen, and I do want to think about it. So I will continue to present what I believe is of concern right now. So let's get on to that other horrible stuff regarding the Fukushima nuclear plant meltdown or whatever is going on over there after 3/11, which I'm now calling it. It is a bit of a mess, if I can go ahead and understate it. It's a little bit of a mess. So we go now to the mainstream Huffington Post. Fukushima nuclear plant cleanup in Japan approaches dangerous operation. That's a mouthful. This came out recently. The operator of Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear plant is preparing to remove 400 tons of highly irradiated spent fuel. Where the hell are they going to put it? From a damaged nuclear reactor building. A dangerous operation that has never been attempted before on this scale. Were you watching The Big Bang Theory last night? This is a bit of a different headspace, right? Containing radiation equivalent to 14,000 times the amount released in the atomic bomb attack on Hiroshima 68 years ago, which Ab says also didn't happen. More than 1,300 used fuel rod assemblies packed tightly together, need to be removed from a building that is vulnerable to collapse should another large earthquake hit the area. So we're all hoping that doesn't happen. Maybe not all of us, though. TEPCO is already in a losing battle to stop radioactive water overflowing from another part of the facility. Thanks for getting specific, HuffPo. And experts question whether it will be able to pull off the removal of all the assemblies successfully. They are questioning whether they will be able to do that. I have never really been much of a gambling man, but I am betting against them being able to do that. Let's go to now the natural news with Mike Adams, calls himself the Health Ranger. He says Fukushima is now in a state of emergency, leaking over 300 tons of radioactive water into the ocean daily. Japan's nuclear watchdog has now declared the leak a state of emergency. Now they're declaring it a state of emergency. Okay, not the day that it happened. Each day, 300 tons. I heard it was 330, which is a key number. 33 with a zero at the end. Tons of radioactive water seeps into the ocean. It's now clear TEPCO has engaged in a 2.5-year cover-up of immense magnitude. I believe it's been leaking into the ocean from the start of the crisis 2.5 years ago. That would make sense if originally when it broke that's when the leak started. Generally, if you open a tin, say you're making some kind of juice, and you open the tin, say Clamato or something, if you open the tin and start to pour, that's when the liquid starts to come out, the moment you start to pour. I don't know why experts need to be involved in getting that point of view across. TEPCO workers sprayed with wildly radioactive water while waiting for a bus. You thought it was bad here. Just out of control. How out of control is the situation of Fukushima? It's so out of control that TEPCO recently had to admit 10 of its workers were somehow sprayed with highly radioactive water while waiting for a bus. That is some bad transit. I've heard the bus system in LA sucks, but the last I heard, you don't get sprayed with water while you're waiting for it. To fully I'm swinging it today. Things are nuts. To fully grasp the extent of the TEPCO denial, realize that only recently did the company finally admit that radioactive groundwater has been leaking into the ocean. This follows years of stark denials from the company whose executives have exhibited a remarkable ability to deny reality, even when their own workers are dying in droves from cancer. It's no exaggeration to say that TEPCO's downplaying of the full extent of Fukushima has put tens of millions of lives at risk. And you are probably one of them. I don't know if you know Stephen Lendman. He's all over the internet. His story on Fukushima is just Fukushima, uncontainable. Basically, pack your bags and see if you can get yourself a ticket to some of the experimental residential dwellers on Mars. There are some people going there, many of them applying from China, because life on Mars with nothing is better than life on China for a lot of Chinese, especially the meditators we were talking about last week. Japan's apocalypse continues. Emergency conditions persist. No end in sight looms. Fukushima's radioactive discharges can't be stopped. They continue. They're uncontainable. That's like 9 sentences in one paragraph. So he's a bit of an alarmist, is Stephen Lendman, but basically because he's talking about 330 tons worth of radioactive water dumping into the containment walls. They can't stop it. They don't know what to do with it. Meanwhile, they're actually trying to boot up another nuclear plant. This is a whole country that is perched on volcanic ridges susceptible to earthquakes. And somehow they think it's a good idea to get this up and running some more. Never mind, we can't deal with the first one. I don't know how we can't seem to deal with that as a humanity, to just step in and say, no, you're not allowed to do this. You've already done it. You've failed miserably. We can't allow this to happen. We have to step into our own power somehow as a race, as a people. And I can assure you that I would never, at this point in my life, veer anywhere near Japan. Sorry, can't do it. It's just way too, and forget Hawaii too. I mean, the radioactive waves, if you can Google up some of the charts of the radioactive leakage and emissions into the water there and then up into the sky and back down. I mean, it is a nightmare. Good. So now I've set that happy tone. If this is all true, well, then my guest will help you get out of at least the grip of government. He says it only has you in its grip because you consented to be there by trickery. Not your trickery, their trickery. They tricked you into believing that you should be there, and you said yes when you signed a form or registered a vehicle or got a driver's license or what have you, and that he can help you release that grip if you so choose. Of course, it always comes down to our own selves. We are going to discuss various freedom technologies, some of which have been authored and created and or compiled by my guest today. Joining me now via Skype all the way from beautiful Hillsboro, Oregon, is Trent Goodbaudy. Trent, thank you for getting up early.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's good to have you here. This is a great connection.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you were doing in your life before you came across the information that maybe things aren't as you had once believed.
Well, I would be happy to. It starts a long, long time ago, probably about 30 years ago at least, when I moved here with my family to Hillsboro, Oregon. The police here have this reputation for being militant, Gestapo style, very controlling, authoritative. I like to say psychopaths, but you can decide that on your own. I've had many instances where I feel my rights were violated by the police here, and that's led me to be forced actually to defend myself. So you mentioned 9/11 earlier, and I think that was the catalyst, or that was what shook me awake, for lack of a better term. And this is going to happen. The more false flag events we see, the more issues, the more control government takes, the more revenue they try to generate by writing frivolous, victimless tickets for people not wearing their seatbelt. It's gonna catch up to them and make more people wake up. And 9/11 is what did it to me. It was, I was watching TV that morning, and I watched that happen, and I was thinking, wow, there's got to be more to this than what we're being told. And ever since then, I've been on a mission to just discover, fill in the blanks, basically, of where we're at, how we got here, and how to get the heck out of it.
So you heard that Hillsboro was already had a reputation for you before you got there.
I guess. I think this whole area is Beaverton has the same kind of reputation. I'm probably going to catch flack for this forever, but you know what? I want them to pull me over. I want to be stopped. I want to have interaction with them so that I can videotape it and show everybody.
Okay, so what have you done then in the way of you've written a book which is called I read it last week, most of it. I didn't finish the last few chapters, but I got through a good chunk of it, and it's called. Is it just called Freedom from Government?
It's called Freedom from Government and How to Reclaim Your Power.
And your website is freedomfromgovernment.us. Okay, so Freedom from Government and How to Reclaim Your Power. How long did it take you to write that book?
It took me, and you're going to think this sounds crazy, it took me 2 weeks to write it. 2 weeks. Wow. But I had been doing the research for 15 years.
Right.
Even longer, probably 30 years, because I have videotapes of interactions with police 20 years ago where I was asserting my rights still. But I didn't know nearly the amount of stuff I know now. So you'd taken in a lot of information over time, and then when you finally sat down to write a book, it basically just came spewing out, and you were able to organize it into... Yes. It was very easy. And the catalyst, actually, I've actually written 4 books so far, and I'm working on a 5th. But the catalyst was a client of mine Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. They are speakers, and they do a program called Go for No. They wrote a book as well. And I went to a seminar with them, and they said, you need to write a book, just write your book. And I finished my first book 4 days after that seminar, 44,000 words. My first book was called You Don't Want to Read What This Man Has to Say.
Okay, so you must be good on the keyboard.
Well, actually, I went to school for programming and web design, and programming is like it's like speaking a language but made with letters and numbers. And you get one comma out of place in your programming, and you have a world of hurt. The whole thing won't work. So in programming, I learned that you have to get everything right and then put it out there and see if it works. And I'm really good at that now. I can put it out there and stuff will work just fine. I did a membership website with the e-commerce system, and I said, okay, it's like plug it in. Woo, it works fine. I don't have to spend any time doing any, troubleshooting or anything.
Right.
So that's what helped me with the English language, is that I got really good at programming and learning logic that way. And it really just made English that much easier, because it was like an advanced kind of language that I had to speak using code. So I don't know if you get that, but it really helped language. And before I started writing my first book, I was writing on Fiverr.com. I do 400-word article for $5, and that got me just able to get the stuff done right away, quick, and have it be good. The first book I wrote was I was sleep deprived when I was done. It's so strange. It almost feels like I was possessed.
Right.
And I don't want to go into supernatural stuff. I want to keep everything firmly based in reality, because you start, sounding like a kook and people will take you like that. But really what it teaches, the book teaches, is who you are. Who are you? We don't know.
Right. But, and that book is entitled, which one is that? Because you've written 4 or 5 books.
That's Freedom from Government, How to Reclaim Your Power. That's the one. And then I also wrote one about transhumanism, nanotechnology, synthetic biology. That came after the How to Reclaim Your Power. And my latest release is called Freedom from Government, Statist Delusions. And that's every statist argument I've ever heard. I totally blow it away.
All right. Well, let me throw some of them at you. Just for
Sure.
now, since we're not all going to read the book while we're listening to this. Here's one. Hey, if we are able to transcend the laws and not be held to account by police officers, then everyone's just going to be marauding around, killing each other and stealing each other's property. Have you heard that one?
Oh, yeah. Check this out. If people accepted personal responsibility for their own actions, they wouldn't have to worry about having a nanny, and things would run so much smoother. Just think about, like, insurance, for example. If you're out on the highway and maybe you need a detailing on your car or some body work, you'll be like, well, I got this insurance coverage and I won't mind if these guys rear end me. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll hit the brakes a little early. That's not being responsible, and that's looking for a handout. And plus insurance, I'm not even going to get into that right now, but it's all about making premium payments and fighting to get, your claims.
Yeah, and don't they always find a way to fight you when you actually have a claim? They try to go out of their way to make sure that they don't have to pay out. Okay. Now, how do they control us? I alluded to it at the beginning of the introduction, where I said that we have to basically give them our consent. Now, I know that maybe a lot of people listening don't really know what that means. But what does it mean, though? How are we giving them our consent, and how do they then, once they've gotten our consent, control us?
Okay, something real quick I want to say before I go into this is that it works in any free country. I don't care what color your flag is. That doesn't matter. Okay?
All right. Should say for our listeners, Trent is in Oregon, which is America, and I'm in Canada, in Toronto. So I think that's what you're alluding to. So you're also saying so probably it doesn't work on the Ivory Coast in Africa and some other places like that. But basically, the Commonwealth countries, the supposedly UN countries, I would imagine.
Yeah, and what you're doing is you're just playing with their procedure. And I just use their laws against them, really. That's all I ever do. Their procedure dictates that they must have positive identification. It's the first element of jurisdiction. It's called subject matter jurisdiction.
Okay.
The accused must be properly identified. And that doesn't mean just handing them your ID. It means, if the officer asks you, well, is this your car? And you say, yeah, that's subject matter jurisdiction because he already ran the plates on your car and it's associated to your name. So to shut him down right away, nip that stuff in the bud as soon as you can, you don't want to make a claim. You don't want to bring a claim to the court because they are all operating in courts of they're all courts of controversy. And what you have to do is remain honorable. And this means no anger, no hostility, no excuses. What you want to do is just not claim what you don't own.
Okay, so let's run it by you've done something in your vehicle, or perhaps not, but for whatever reason you're being pulled over by an officer who is probably already. I'm not a cop. I don't know the system, but although I have played one on TV. I know that I'm going to assume that while they're pulling you over, they're already jamming your license plate into their computer, and oftentimes they have your quote-unquote name before they even approach you to get your information. Then you all of a sudden don't give them the same information. Is that a problem? I mean, I'm sure most people would think that is a problem. If you say, no, I'm not that, they probably already think they know where you live and your address and your all that pertinent information.
They do before they even stop you, and that's where the license plate comes in. They ran your plate, and as a matter of fact, the plate is like an advertisement for the corporation that you're claiming to be a part of. So the officer sees your license plate, and he thinks to himself, well, hey, these guys are within my, they're like a franchise of my corporation. So, of course, they're going to want to do business with me, and I'm supposed to be providing them a benefit anyway for their own safety. So I'm going to pull them over for this, this light violation or this seatbelt violation. And the reason why they can do this is because you're presumed to be acting in a public capacity, which means that it's another way of saying that you work for them without getting a paycheck. I don't work for them. And if they are going to try to say that I work for them, they need to provide me with payroll records because I don't work for free.
Yeah, that's how I feel when I go to a grocery store. Have you got those there where they don't have a cashier anymore? They just have a scanner and a system of bagging, and I never get a discount on the food that I've already scanned and processed myself. So,
and that makes sense too because they're paying a person to be the checker at the other lanes. Shouldn't we get a discount for using something like that?
Yeah.
But,
so they control us by when you get a driver's license. What is happening there?
Okay. Well, I started out by saying the license plate. And so that is like an advertisement. That's an announcement to the official that you are acting in a public capacity, and he can now further approach you and attempt to contract with you, but only with your consent. Like it says and I know this isn't the Canadian. I'm not sure what your document is called, rights and something.
We have a. We have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
That's it, exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. And our Declaration of Independence states that the government only derives its power from the consent of the governed. That's a real basic fundamental concept. And people take it the wrong way. They think, oh, well, that means voting. And actually voting is the wrong game to be playing because if you register to vote, you're saying that you will accept the outcome. So you have to be responsible, even if the guy that you didn't vote for got into office.
Right.
You still have, just like entering a plea. But we'll get to that in a second probably. But back to the license or the driver's license. See, once you've made that advertisement with your license plate, he comes up to the window and he says, driver's license, registration, and insurance, please. And what do you do? What do you do, Alan?
What would I do in that situation? Well, usually you just give it all to him and start getting a plan in your head about talking him out of giving you any points, so at least your insurance doesn't go up. That's what I've done before. What do you do?
That's consenting. You just said, hey, I'm open to contract. Let's do this. But what I would do, he comes up to the window and he asks for my driver's license, registration, and insurance. Well, the most important thing to remember is to always stay in honor. And the second most important thing to remember is to always answer questions with a question. And you can't remain silent anymore. Ever since Jesus did it, they made it so that you have the right to remain silent, which means your silence is acquiescence. You can't remain silent. Sorry to say.
So what would your questions be? See, that was good. That was a question with a question.
Yeah, there you go. I would say, well, he'll ask me for my driver's license, registration, insurance. I would say, am I required to have that?
And what would he say?
He would say, of course you are. You're driving.
And what would you say?
I
think I'm getting the hang of this.
I would say, no, I'm not driving. I'm traveling. And actually, I would use an unrebuttable statement like, I think I'm traveling. Because if you use an unrebuttable, it can't be proven in court as a fact.
Right.
Like if you say something like the sky is blue, someone could say, no, the sky is aquamarine.
Right. Now, isn't he just going to say that you're parsing, this is just word games at that point?
Possibly, but then I could hand him my 4 pages of Supreme Court and High Court citations about the citizens' right to travel. And that's even citizens. That's people that have made an agreement with government to be, subject to the rules. Can still travel. It's the right to liberty is what it's called. So it's actually against the law to do this and to license cars and make driver's license, but it is not illegal if you're operating in a commercial capacity. So if you are driving a school bus, if you are driving a limousine, a truck, you need to have a license, registration, insurance, and all that, because you hold a liability. And that's why the driver's license was created in the first place. It was to stop the commercial drivers from doing hit and runs, and how they sold it to the people was, don't you want to hold them accountable? If you make them get licenses, they'll be recorded by the government. You'll be able to find them after they hit you, stuff like that. So, but it was never intended for the free people.
And this is all available in the in your Constitution, in America's Constitution. The verbiage that says,
it's all in your perception, and that's the most important thing of making this whole thing work, is working on your inner self. There is the biggest things I've encountered with people is just simple denial and cognitive dissonance. They simply cannot accept that something like this could be true. And I think it was Eisenhower or somebody that said, to be confronted with a conspiracy so great, it's hard to even accept that it exists. So that's where we're at. That's how they do it is, and it only takes one generation to set the tone for the rest of eternity.
All right. Now, so on whose authority would you say we have these rights? Where do they come from, these rights to travel? Is that something that's in the Constitution, and then subsequently over time there have been state and municipal laws or acts overlaid on top of that conflict with it, but they just don't advertise the conflict, and then you just get yourself sucked into a vortex there? Is that how it happens?
Well, they have the Constitution, statute, code, policy, regulations, rules, all that stuff is not applicable to you unless you have sworn an oath or signed the document or claim it in another way. But really, it's only if you swear an oath.
Which is getting a driver's license, right? You're swearing an oath.
No, when you get a driver's license, you are trading in your right to travel for a privilege to drive, which comes now with responsibilities. And if you don't uphold your responsibility, you can be punished. So, and that actually, any contract made with fraud is void on its face. So if your driver's license is actually fraudulent because it was made without full disclosure. I mean, if they didn't tell you that you're now subject to the whole huge book of statutes, and if you haven't read it, you don't know what that is, there's no disclaimer about any of that, it's fraudulent. And what I'm doing is acting with honor, and that's how you have to do it. You have to be honorable, and honorable means you're not causing a controversy, you're not fighting, you're not making any claims, just inquiring as to the status of the situation, basically.
Okay,
now you remain honorable.
So then, if someone with a driver's license gets pulled over, and then they issue a ticket, and he gives him his license and the insurance and the whole business, and then later on he decides, you know what, I'm going to fight this in court.
Yeah.
I guess based on what you're saying, that's pretty much why almost every time that happens, that individual loses in court, because they've already signed on, like basically by getting the license and by acquiescing and putting themselves in the jurisdiction of the police officer, and as you say, handing over your rights to them. They're saying, you did this, it's going to cost this much, it's all pre-prescribed in our codes and acts, and you owe this. So at that point, you just have to pay because you made that mistake, and you're basically saying you're playing a game, and you're deciding that you're deciding at the last minute that you don't want to play that game. Like if I sat down with you when we played Monopoly, and then we agree that that's what's going on, and then you stop on my square that has a hotel on it, and then I say you have to pay me. You can't say no, I don't want to do that. Right, because you've already sat down with me to play the game.
Yeah, or 2 moves before checkmate and then a game of chess, and I throw the board over. I don't want to play no more.
Right?
What?
Yeah, you can't do that. So you need to say in the first place, no, listen, I don't really want to have a game of chess with you. I'm just going to go about my business.
Yeah.
So that's where you're coming from.
And what I would say is, who are you to be challenging me to this game anyway? We're all equal, and you have really there's no reason to be doing this in the first place. And I'm not advocating people go out and commit crimes. I'm advocating accepting individual responsibility for everything you do, which means if you commit a crime which has a victim and you've harmed someone, you should probably just step up and accept the responsibility for that. However, I've determined that the courts, I'm not sure if you call them provincial courts or we call them circuit courts here.
Yeah, provincial courts we have here,
yeah. They're operating 100% in fraud. I mean, it's contract court. You have to contract with them, and you do it unknowingly. So it's fraudulent. It's all fraud.
Well, it's also put out there like it's the government, and from what I understand, and when you go to that court, it's like a provincial court or a federal court, but they're all corporations. They're all private, including the police services that arrest you and bring you in the first place. So there's this whole perception among so many where, it's just the government doing these things, but really they're basically private contracting corporations that eventually provide the government some of the revenue that they pull in, and then who knows where the rest of it goes.
Yeah, and the words. Also, the words are what, like there's the word traveling and there's the word driving. Mm-hmm. What's the difference?
Well, you're saying that, one is a commercial activity, driving, and the other one is you're moving your body from one area to another.
Exactly. So when I when I conduct myself on a daily basis, I operate in the private. And if the moment an officer stops me, he brings me out into the public. And, in the public, I have lots of stuff I can do as well. But a lot of my remedy will be started in private, like a commercial lien, for example. That is something that's just between you and whoever violated your rights, or whoever, damaged you and owes you something now. And,
so if you're, sorry, let me just step in here. So if you're someone operating in the private, you're able to initiate a commercial lien against someone?
Well, if you're someone operating in the private, you actually have more power than a police officer.
Okay, so that seems to be a bit of a contradiction to me, but then again, I don't understand this whole thing by any means.
Yeah, well, it's all an illusion. It's smoke and mirrors. What they do is they put a mirror in front of you, so you see a reflection of reality, and then they blur the edges with smoke. And I got this from Robert Bernard. He's really awesome. I don't know if
the Canadian free man. Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't spoken with him. Actually, I have. I have actually met him, but I haven't had him on the show.
Yeah, he's got some good ways of thinking about how everything works. But basically, it's just, a mirror, a reflection of reality, but blurred with smoke on the edges, so you can't see where the mirror ends and where reality begins. And it's just a big illusion.
Okay, I didn't know we were going to be talking about 9/11 on this show as well. But I hear what you're saying. But listen, can't we just get a lawyer to handle that kind of thing? Like a driving infraction or something else that you feel, hey, wait a minute, I was in the right here. This is my why don't we just get a lawyer?
Well, a lawyer has also sworn an oath, but he has sworn an oath to uphold the court. He's sworn an oath to his first duty is to the court, not to the client. So when you hire an attorney, he's bound to procedure. He can never actually defend your rights because he's sworn an oath to only use procedure with court. So he can never bring a challenge of jurisdiction because he's already admitted jurisdiction.
Right. And additionally, he's costing you a lot of money.
Yes, and they bill by the hour. And, of course, we'll take this to trial, but it's going to be, 20 hours of prep. And then, my hourly fee for being in court is actually twice as much as it is for doing the paralegal work. So it's going to be quite a bit. And then when you get sentenced or whatever, he says, oh, sorry, I did the best I could, but, you're the one that's going to have to go to jail. And don't forget to pay your bill. I'm going to be sending you one.
Right. I'm talking with Trent Goodbaudy. He's explaining, we're going to get into some freedom technologies. If you don't know what that means, keep listening. Trent is joining us from Hillsboro, Oregon. Trent, tell us what happened recently to your sister. I know you had a video up on YouTube about that. What was going on with your sister? And I've already seen the video, but I'd like you to describe why the police were after her and what happened there. What's in that video? And what's been the result of that video going up?
Well, I don't really want to get into specifics of what is happening because it's resulting now perhaps in litigation against some entities and stuff.
Okay, well, just tell us what you can tell us. I don't want to push you over the edge or get you to say anything you don't want to say, but just tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
What I do want to say about that is I got a call from my sister, and she said, the cops are over here again. And I said, well, do you need me to come help? And, she had been dealing with this a couple times already. I guess a whole bunch of cops came over a few days before that. So I gave her a notice to put on the door, and I also gave her a copy to put on the door of United States Code Title 18, Section 241 and 242, which are about human rights violations and violations under color of law, and which means that they're acting under color of law. But if they don't identify themselves, then they can be held accountable as violating someone's rights without, as a clown, basically, because they haven't identified themselves. So I rode over there on my bike, and I, got off the bike. I said, hi, who are you? Who are you guys? And one of them showed me his badge, and he said, we're police. And I'm all, I've seen people wear costumes before. How do I know you're not just wearing a costume? Do you have any other kind of identification? And they didn't want to provide it. He told me his badge number was a PD or something like that. But he didn't even give me the number. He didn't have a business card. He didn't show me any kind of ID from his agency. So he was acting under color of law without, in violation actually of Section 242. And, I called him out on it. And I said, are you guys trying to get sued? And maybe it wasn't those exact words, but it was pretty much that was what it was about. And he's all, well, I'm going to take your sister to jail. And I'm all, where's your warrant? And they didn't produce any kind of warrant. So I knew that they were, acting in fraud from the get-go, just doing what they always do, trying to get you to tell on yourself and admit that you've done something wrong. And so they tried to say, well, she was over your house. How about we go over to your house? And I said, we're not talking about that. We're talking about lawsuits, and you're in violation of United States Code right now. Do you know what that is? And he says, no. And I said, you don't know the law? And about that point, they started walking off. They said, bye, Trent, bye, Trent. Of course, they all know me, but I don't care because I know what they're doing is in fraud, and I have a duty to be honorable, which means I don't commit fraud. I don't cause controversy. I don't bring a claim when it's not mine. As a matter of fact, they can't prove that I own anything. So that's how you should take it, is that you don't own anything, including your name. Your name is certified by the government via a birth certificate when you're born, and that means that you, at some point, will be able to work for government. And guess what?
You do.
It's voluntary compliance. You do it. You work for government. But the thing is, you don't even get a paycheck. So stop.
Okay, so do you know the difference then between income and, people pay income tax? Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
Well, originally income tax it's only for agents of government. It's because you can't take someone's money without their permission. And, if I were to go around and say that I was instituting an income tax, or else I would, put some kind of criminal liability on people and take them to jail if they didn't pay, that would be called racketeering, and it would be illegal. And they're doing pretty much the same thing, except they depend on your voluntary compliance. Once again, it's just a whole big scam. So and by the way, the IRS or the CRA, whatever it is, they have not ever brought a willful failure to file case or a tax evasion case against someone who hasn't filed a signed tax form with them. And when you sign that form, it says under penalty of perjury.
Right.
So you know what that implies? That implies that you're swearing an oath, because you have to be sworn to be guilty of penalty of perjury. And guess what else? If you don't know that you're swearing an oath, that's automatic perjury. I mean,
if you don't know you're swearing an oath.
If you don't know you're committing perjury, that's automatic perjury. I mean, if you swear that you're not going to commit perjury and you don't know, that's automatic perjury.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Right.
Yeah.
And so you're saying when you fill out the form, the tax form, and send it all in, and by signing it,
you're swearing under penalty of perjury that you owe the tax.
Right. So that's how you get into trouble. So you said that no one has been charged with IRS or CRA who has not. What did you say there? Who hasn't?
Without a signed tax form in that agency's possession. They have to have evidence from you that you've contracted with them.
So how does one transition from, like yourself? Well, almost all of us transition from one position to the other. How do you go from, once upon a time, Trent signed a tax form and agreed to all this stuff, and then 30 years ago or 20 years ago you decided no. How do you reconcile, bridging the gap?
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's ludicrous to sign anything you didn't make. That's why they call it a maker's mark, because I only sign stuff I make. If somebody hands me a form and says, here, sign this, I'd rather write my own, or at least make modifications, to the terms. But I'm sorry. What was your question? I got off on a tangent.
That's okay. Tangents are welcome. I was just saying, like, if you were in a position where you're signing your tax forms and you're doing all of this stuff and you're getting your driver's license, and now you realize, wait a minute, I've already got the right to do this kind of thing. I've already got my own. I'm standing in my own power here. Okay, that's all well and good, but there must be some kind of transitional process that takes place. You can't just, it's like I said before, when you're in court, you can't realize when you're in court, hey, I don't really need to pay this if he pulled you over while you had an active license with an active plate and an active insurance. You are going to pay this. We already agreed on that earlier. So how does one make a transition from I guess, let's say, being asleep to being awake? What do you need to do?
Well, the most important thing is inner work. Working on yourself. But I imagine you're probably talking about exterior work that you need to do, right?
Well, I mean, to me, the interior work is if you really come to a realization that, in your case, the United States Constitution is providing you all of the freedoms that you need, and that these subsequent municipal and state acts and codes are just an illegal, unfair encumbrance upon you, then you are awake if you've realized that. So that's all well and good on the inside or in your mind. Yeah. And you can argue that point or not argue, but ask questions of that point to the officer. But, there must be some kind of means to – I mean, I guess one thing you would have to do is go into the DMV in your case and say, I really don't want this driver's license anymore. You take it back. Is that something? Am I on the right track there, or am I completely wrong with that as well?
No, that's getting close. I want to say first, however, that I don't need a piece of paper to know who I am.
No, but you had one at one point.
Yeah. So what you want to do is file a document called a notice of rescission.
Okay.
And you can rescind every contract that you've ever made. And every contract that you've ever made fraudulently falls flat on its face. But if you're going to start doing this, you have to accept responsibility for yourself, and you cannot act in fraud anymore.
Right. So let's say I've done something like that, and that this is about responsibility. This isn't about. I assume when you're asking me if I've done the inner work, does that mean that I think I'm going to, driving 120 miles an hour through a school zone while I'm hammered? The answer is no.
Yeah.
Of course not.
No.
I drive 120 miles an hour through a school zone while I'm sober. I just want to get that out there. But what I'm asking is, if you get to that point, then what happens, Trent? Say you're driving somewhere and, oh, my God, a ball bounces out and a little girl comes chasing after it, and she's all 4 years old or something, all of 4 or 5 years old, and she didn't look both ways, and you do hit her. And you're driving at or below the speed limit. You're doing everything lawfully at that time. But you don't have insurance now. Now what happens?
Well, even if you did have insurance, no amount of money is going to bring somebody back to life. So just with that said, accept responsibility for your actions by making it right however you can. And if you take someone's life, you're probably indebted to someone for your life. That would be my guess, but just basically, adequate compensation. And the commercial courts are kind of like a third-party compensation service. They always make a profit. If somebody had a real claim, it would be in civil court. And civil court only does monetary stuff. They don't put anybody in jail. Because I guess they're not in the business of warehousing souls like the commercial court is.
Right,
but,
that was like the whole OJ thing where he got off on the criminal charges and then the family was able to sue him for how much money it was for the civil charges. But let's go back a little bit with that theoretical little girl who was chasing her ball into the street and say she wasn't killed, she was just injured. Anywhere from nominally injured, maybe you broke her leg, or right on up to now she's going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. So you have to, and you don't have any kind of financial kickstart of the insurance to at least start things. Now, I of course accept your understanding and awareness that you've got to deal with the fact whether there's insurance or not, that you've taken someone's life or severely injured someone. But at that point, you would say, there would probably be a lot of people who still are in the system and who want to be in the system and who don't even know there doesn't need to be a system, furious with you for doing that.
Yeah, yes.
And, they would be losing their minds. They're like, can you believe that guy hit her and he didn't even have insurance? Oh, my God. And, she's got a broken leg now. And, so I'm guessing you would pony up and pay for her medical needs out of your own. That would be part of what you're saying when you're accepting responsibility. Am I right about that?
Anything within my power that I could do to make it right is what I would do. And, I want to clarify that there's going to be accidents regardless of if there's a law or not. Regardless of if there's a third-party enforcement agency or not, there's going to still be accidents.
Right.
So if everybody accepted responsibility for everything they did, at a traffic stop where someone got rear-ended, each party would just walk away and say, oh, well, that sucks. It happened, but, let's just get it fixed. Not looking for a free handout, not looking for someone to fix this for them. You have to be responsible for yourself. and accidents happen. That's all I can say. And if you do cause something to happen, I would accept responsibility for it. That's part of being honorable. So, yeah.
Okay. Right. So sorry, I had to get into that kind of area because they're all theoretics. I think that insurance was dreamed up in the first place for that reason, but it's kind of metastasized into this evil tumor that is completely out of control. So it's still about keeping it reined in. Look
at how crazy and insane the medical industry is with their insurance. They've really outdone themselves by bloating and just making the whole. Well, I don't know about you guys in Canada. You guys have kind of socialized health care kind of deal, or?
Somewhat, yeah.
Is it?
It's not as apparently it's not as great as people outside of this country believe it to be.
Yeah.
But it is. I've been through some pretty good experiences with the healthcare system that I'm not sure how I would have dealt with it otherwise.
Yeah.
Regarding my daughter, as a matter of fact.
Well, just think of it this way as well. If there weren't so many parasitic organizations wanting to gobble up all the money, and it's all a game, it's all a sham, because all the money is printed by maybe a different agency, but they're all working cahoots, so they know what the flow of money is, they know how much is coming in, going out, and they can control the society pretty proficiently based on voluntary compliance.
Right.
So I'm not sure where I was going with that. I kind of lost my point.
That's okay. Let me just ask you, you do speaking engagements? Do you do seminars, or how do you get this word out? Is it all on the internet?
I have several websites. The first one's freedomfromgovernment.us. The one for me for presentations and speaking engagements is called keynote.TrentGoodbaudy.com. You can find all my products at shop.TrentGoodbaudy.com. My current events website is trentslist.org. And that pretty much covers it. That's my world, my universe.
Okay.
But if people, that pretty much covers it. The keynote speaking website, the products, the information, and the freedom.
All right, so that's great. So if there's anything else you want to add at this point, something else that we should know, maybe I didn't ask you about it, I should be asking more questions. This whole show is about asking questions, so I think I'm already on the right foot. But I just want to make sure that everything you wanted to get said has been said by you.
There's one more thing I would like to say.
I knew it. All right, go for it.
The Constitution is not applicable to you. Statute is not applicable to you. And I probably already said this, but it's not applicable to you. So
who is it applicable to?
It's applicable to anyone that swore an oath. And if it's not you don't claim it. You don't go into court saying that you have constitutional rights. I mean, you could, but you have to clarify that it's their constitution, not yours. I only have one rule: do no harm, and I guess that covers it. We just need to realize who we are and take back our power. It's all ours to begin with. They've tricked us.
And to say we need to realize who we are, that is such a lofty concept for so many people. Because a lot of people would say, well, I'm a guy sitting here in a chair watching a basketball game. That's who I am. So what would you say is your understanding of who we are? Are we are you talking about an individualistic sovereign mindset, or a collective universal protoplasm that's all connected at one? How do you see things?
Well, the term sovereign has caught quite a bit of flack, and it's kind of like the conspiracy theorist term. It's not even really applicable anymore because it's lost its meaning, really. And so
the conspiracy theorist meaning is originally, I believe, formed as a slur against someone who has enough gray matter to piece together that the official story regarding almost everything is not really as it would be. And it would be so much easier if we could just all keep our heads down, do what they tell us, go where they want us to go, and do it the way they want it to do it. And there wouldn't be any problems. But, of course, there were problems under that system, and people have realized that isn't working. So when I think of who you are, I think of being I have my own rights, which are I can tell if I'm doing the wrong thing when I'm doing it or before I'm about to do it, and then I'm able to stop doing it.
It's called morals.
Yeah, if I get into an argument with you, and we haven't done that on this conversation. I don't tend to do that on the show with anybody. But if I get into an argument with you and I really take issue with what it is you're saying, I think that's okay. But if I decide I'm just going to grab that hammer over there and I'm going to bash him in, I know there's an awareness. People, I don't know what they call it, a consciousness or a God energy or common sense. And it has nothing to do with the fear of breaching a written statute or act or code. It has to do with an inherent inner knowing that I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be bashing you over the head with a hammer, even if I totally disagree with what you're saying and how you're saying it. So I don't, and I just stop right there. And that is how I know that I'm functioning properly. If I don't have that feeling where I need to stop myself, then I'm probably suited for elected office.
Yes, or a police agency, or or judge.
I just don't understand it.
But what I wanted to say about that is that we're real. That's the difference. We are real. They are all fictitious. They're creations of us. We created them. So they don't have any more power than we do.
Are you saying, when you say they, are you talking about like police and courts, or are you talking about the acts and the statutes that seem to be the lifeblood of the police and courts, or are you talking about both?
Both. Yes.
Okay.
Their authority is given to them by us, so we can take it away too, and that's how it's supposed to work. If you go in there acting honorable and saying I use a name instead of I am a name, the judge is going to be like, wow, somebody is finally doing it right and being honorable. Because you don't want to cause a controversy, and that's what you're doing.
Although I have heard, though, of people that have done that kind of thing and then have just been arrested with contempt of court or taken back into holding, and they bring them out again a few hours later, and it just goes around and around on a loop.
Yes, in those instances, those are people that need to learn the law. They've lost contact with what they're supposed to be doing, and they need to get sued. Simple as that.
And they need to get sued, did you say?
Yeah. If they're violating people's rights, without any cause or without a reason, then they need to have a lawsuit filed against them, and that's what our recourse is.
Wouldn't that be funny though if you put a lawsuit against someone like that, a judge or whatever, and then during the trial the judge said, "Well, that's not my name. I'm not that judge."
Yeah.
Then
yeah. Well, it's funny because you don't have to do that. I mean, all you have to do is positively ID them. I mean, and there's other ways actually too. There's something called a commercial lien, where they don't have to give your name. You just make a claim against them, and you say what they did wrong. And if you're acting with fraud, that will be called out. You don't start one of those that's fraudulent or without being based in a claim that is actually real, where you have evidence and witnesses to prove it.
Yeah.
And anybody that does wrong needs to be held accountable. And I'm not saying that, I know exactly what punishment is right for each case, or that people should be killed if they kill someone else. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people need to be held accountable in one way or another for the wrongs they do. And they don't need a government agency to do that. We can do it. We have the power. In private, we have way more power than anybody in public.
All right, Trent, we're gonna go now. We have to leave. I so am glad that you were able to take the time and speak with us. Aside from your books and your products on your websites, which we do have listed here, and I will put them up on the page as well. A link to that. I would also like to know, where in general can you point the average listener who might be interested in some of this to, in the way of public documentation, aside from what you have for sale? Where did you derive that from? Are we looking at the U.S. Constitution of the United States? Are there specific passages that you can point us to? And again, thank you for coming on.
Well, there is a few, yes. There's something that was written all the way back in 1215 called the Magna Carta. And that is what, I
have that on my Kindle.
Yeah, it's actually where the people revolted against the king and demanded that they be treated properly, or, allowed to have a certain amount of freedom. That was actually a precursor to the Declaration of Independence that created the United States. And people say, well, didn't the Constitution create the United States? No, the Constitution did not create the United States. The Declaration created it, and the Constitution bound the government. It's like the rule book for the Constitution. And laws can be made that are unconstitutional, and it's up to you to defend yourself against those. And I know it sounds all wrong, but that's the way they rigged it, so that they would have the upper hand.
Okay, so some pretty good core foundational documents available to almost anyone that has a computer or access to a resource library.
Yeah, there's the Magna Carta, there's the Bouvier's legal dictionary from 1856. There's also Black's Law Dictionary. What you want to do is just go through the dictionary and look up words that you don't know the meaning of. Just look up the words.
I suggest you look up words you think you do know the meaning of.
Yes, like person.
That'll turn your head around. All right, Trent, thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website, conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.